Screaming brand new when they just sanitize the old shit. Suppose this just another clever Jedi mind trick that they been running across stars do all the time. I find it's distressing, it's never no in between. We either niggas or kings, we either bitches or queens. This daily ritual seems immersed in the perverse, full of short attention span, short tempers, and short skirts. Low barrel automatics released in short birth. The length of black life is treated with short work. Get yours first, them other niggas secondary. That type of illin' that be filling up the cemetery. This life is temporary, but the soul is eternal.
Man, I have no idea what that was.
Hey, Black Star, y'all seen Babe, aka Mighty Most Def, man.
I was like, man, boy,
That's
wasn't
Thieves
they
in
spoken
Night,
word
man.
back tonight?
Hey, man, that's one of the classics.
Oh, okay.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies, men, women, children, babies, me, you, your mama, and your cousin too. This Gentleman's History Hour. EQ, aka Eric B for President, aka John Soul Train, aka Booker E. Washington, a.k.a. Studi Wood Red. What you got?
Hey, man, I'm just Rob, man. 10X over here, man. You know,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's going to be a fun episode,
you know
man. You know,
some people do call me You Ain't Never Lied because I just be speaking the truth, you know.
Hey, man.
You know, I have been called How Does He Do It, you know, because I just get to doing magic and stuff.
So you got a few AKs.
Yeah, I'm a magician, but I only do shows for magicians, you know. So it's just.
Hey, we got Paine Productions is down with us. Shrewd and Vivid is down with us. That's SAV.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shrewd and Vivid.
Shrewd and Vivid is down with us. Yeah. YouTube people is down with us. We got Apple Podcasts is down with us.
Hey, keep it going.
Hey, man. All of the people is down with us, man. This is GHH. This is the history episode on history, man.
Yeah, the meta. The meta episode. You know.
So Rob, I got a question to ask. So when did you fall in love with history?
Shoot. About the time we started this podcast. You know, I really didn't.
Yeah.
You know, that's why. You know, a lot of people. I tell people this all the time. I said like a year ago, you probably knew more about Black history than me. Like, and this is what I tell people who think like, you know, man, this is amazing how y'all, you know, the stuff y'all talk about. And I'm like, literally, like, I knew Martin, Malcolm, you know, pretty much that a year ago. So it's one of those things where it's just been a journey of effort, you know, but it's been a, you know, real fulfilling journey. And it has tangible results. You know, like I was telling you, moving out of my apartment, I would have never cleaned up my apartment the way I cleaned it up when I left if I didn't know about Booker T and him wanting to get in Hampton and him taking advantage of just when a teacher asked him to sweep a room, he saw that as his opportunity. And he swept the room 3 times and came back and dusted it 4 times because he wanted to do a masterful job and something simple. So it has a practical, you know, application. We're not just studying history for history's sake.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I got a question for y'all fellas. What's y'all earliest memory of history being taught to y'all in school? Can you remember?
Probably 2nd grade.
Oh, wow. You got a way better memory than me.
Yeah, 2nd grade, Briar Road. But it was basically, you know, standard. Columbus discovered America. You know, Indians were here. It was Thanksgiving. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I remember this, but in elementary, we learned a song about Indians, and it used to be like, Cherokee people, Cherokee tribe, so proud to live, so proud to die. Why were they teaching us that in 2nd grade? I don't know, but the school used a lot of like mnemonics or used a lot of songs to teach lessons. Mm-hmm. You know, and for whatever reason I remember that song. You
know. What about Sav? Can you remember, man?
Yeah, I can't remember like a class per se, but yeah, like you said, using songs. I remember what the 1862 Christopher Columbus sailed the Ocean Blue.
Yeah,
or whatever. I remember that probably from elementary, but my earliest memories of actual classroom history is in middle school. And my middle school we had a course for Texas history. Mm-hmm. So we had to think American history and Texas history. And they really drove that Texas history, you know, in us real deep over there.
Same here. They made sure you knew about that Santa Ana.
Oh, yeah.
They told you that Alamo.
Yeah,
hey, you know,
right. You know,
Alamo. Hey, they drill that Alamo fried in.
They had the Alamo. And then can y'all remember when slavery was taught to y'all? In school, can you remember when it came up? Was it elementary? Did they hit us with that in elementary, or was it more middle school?
For me, it was middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about it in elementary school, but it wasn't. It was just like a footnote. They didn't really describe slavery in as far as in like the gruesome elements of it. It was just, almost as if it was normal. Now, granted, I was at an all-white school. I was at Briar Grove, so maybe they didn't see the, importance of it, but that's, how I remember the elementary school.
And what about the Black History time? Did they have the? Because I'm trying to think. In my elementary schools, it was predominantly black. I think we did have like Black History stuff, but I can't just totally remember. But they probably had little stuff hanging around the school. The typical. I know they drove MLK hard on us.
Yeah,
that's all Black History celebration was from elementary to middle school was Martin Luther King.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
some Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks. Yeah, the Civil Rights movement.
Yeah,
the Civil Rights era was Black History.
Yep, it was Martin, and then it was like, and the Martin Luther King that they presented was like this jolly, almost Santa Claus type of figure, who had this dream that white people and black people could be friends, and that was pretty much who they presented. They didn't present, poor. They never said nothing about poor people's Martin, or the Martin what he was on before he died.
They sanitized that the way they fed us the Black history. But even in terms of history, now I can remember learning about Anne Frank, and I can remember learning about the Holocaust.
Yeah, I remember that. Definitely remember the Holocaust. Remember, they talked about Christopher Columbus like he was a hero. They talked about Christopher Columbus like he came to save the day, like he was Jack Bauer or something. He just, it was, and that was pretty much the sanitized history story that got repeated. Columbus came 1492, discovered America, and that was, and then the Texas, remember the Alamo. I guess would have been like Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah.
George Washington, obviously.
We got
president.
some Abe Lincoln,
and then
Abe Lincoln,
Benjamin Franklin invented everything.
I do. You know what I do remember? Now that you say that, Sam, I do remember who chopped down the tree. Supposedly didn't lie. Chopped down the cherry tree. Was that George Washington?
I don't know the cherry tree story.
Yeah, supposedly like he chopped down the cherry tree or something, and he didn't lie. I think it may have been George Washington. And Benjamin Franklin, was he the one with the kite?
I believe
Which
so.
one had the kite? So now it's starting to come back to me. They drove that home with Benjamin Franklin and the kite, and then lightning and electricity or whatever with him flying a kite.
Yeah.
So,
and to be fair, that's the one I ain't mad at, because Ben Franklin was a bad man. Like of all the ones that like they touched on, now that what I've learned about him, I'm not tripping on learning about him. He was the first postmaster. Ben Franklin actually was a factor. Some of these other people though, it was just kind of like. Man.
They all were factors. The factor can be good and it can be bad.
Well, I think Ben. I found a lot of intriguing things about him. Just from his personal journals and stuff. Practice of a virtue every week, self-rating of a score on it. So I found Ben Franklin to be, on my short list of white folks who have characteristics I really wanted to embody in certain ways.
Yeah, they never really taught us about Thomas Paine, the Commonwealth, which, he was. Interesting story when you talk about the ethnicity of people in history, because I don't think he ever practiced slavery, or he was opposing slavery back then. Thomas Paine, but he wrote the Commonwealth. Pretty known book, for around that time. But also, so like elementary, middle school, high school, it seemed like it all stayed the same. We didn't have
that
any
Boston
new
Tea Party too.
We learned the Boston Tea
Boston
Party.
Tea Party was heavy.
But it seemed like nothing really changed. Like you learned history in elementary, and then you learn history in middle school, and then you learn history in high school. But it seemed like it was kind of along the same vein of the stuff that we talked, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, of course. A little bit of the Constitution, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance, and you learn about the flag and Betsy Ross and stuff like that. It was instilled in us to where even though I was forgetting all this stuff, it's starting to come back to me. Yeah. And
it expanded maybe to world history, but even world history was real sanitized, and it was a lot of that was World War I, World War II, Hitler.
It got
Nazis.
a little bit into that.
Yeah, so it was definitely It definitely was one of those situations where, like the black part of it was not really that important. We were like the long snapper or something, like, everybody else was like,
special teams.
Yeah, we weren't, not even the real specialty. Like, not even no important.
The long snapper. Yeah.
So it was like one of those type of things. I'll say for me, luckily, one of the things I did have, my father was really, he did provide a lot of supplemental history learning. So through him, I was able to be exposed to stuff outside of school as far as like research, because he had me, I remember I was like young, like 9 or 10. I couldn't go outside until I read a certain amount. And he had me reading like Naeem Akbar. And
That's
then
a fam you got. Community itself.
Yeah, and I know he's stationed in Ann Arbor, but he definitely, because I met some of his relatives when I was at fam. I didn't know he went there, but like him, I was reading like Watching White Guys Have All the Fun, Dennis Kimbrough's Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. So my dad was really big on trying to instill some type of pride and some type of making me invest in learning about it, but it still probably was. If I would have been in the same house with him every day, it probably would have hit home more. But when you're doing it every other weekend, even that was like, because I was doing it more so I could go outside and play more so than doing it with the true appreciation and knowledge of self. But it did give me a chance to at least learn, some things outside the classroom that I was able to take.
You made a good point. You said the supplemental history, which is the history outside of school. And my supplemental history, man, was hip hop.
Yeah.
I can vividly remember, and this is wild because, 1989, KRS-One had an album called The Blueprint of Hip Hop. When Nas said, "You stupid," KRS already made an album called The Blueprint. He was talking about the album in 1989. He had a song called "You Must Learn." They had the video. They was showing the video of "You Must Learn." He was name dropping. He was basically talking about what we're talking about, how history is not really taught right in school, and he has one of the lines is like, "You can be more than a janitor. They don't teach you about Benjamin Banneker, the man that made the almanac." And I mean, he was name dropping. Now, I don't know when people name drop, but he was name dropping people like Benjamin Banneker, Garrett Morgan, Harriet Tubman, Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, he was just naming in rhyme wise. And they was showing it, and then also on that same album, he had a song called "Why Is That?" And these were like the lead singles. And this is '89, wow. So he was already talking about our miseducation. And in "You Must Learn," he was talking about the original name of Africa is a Kibalon. He was talking about the mystery schools. And, as a kid, you just watching it, but it did kind of inspire me. So stuff like that was going on, whether we realized it or not.
Yeah.
But it was there. So we say in 1989, he was making these complaints.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this in 2021. And stuff still,
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. And then one of the things I really feel like it's got to be a challenge for like parents, especially parents who worked hard to put themselves in a position where, they can provide resources for their child. It's like one of the things you don't think about when you're looking at a school is, knowledge of self. You look at, okay, this is a good school. And normally what we consider a good school is going to be, reading, science, math, test scores, college placement. That's a good school. We don't look at black history or knowledge of self as an element that makes a school a good school. And it's got to be challenging because I'm not a parent, but I can imagine, my mother, it was a gifted program. You're trying to choose out of what can give your kid the best chance at life. I understand how she probably could have come to that conclusion, but I feel like in our ambition to get ahead, we haven't emphasized the importance of history. If history comes last, like no one really puts history in the same tier as math, science, test scores, college prep. But history, I'm coming to realize, is just as important because history creates a standard and a certain self-reliance and a self-governance that makes you carry yourself to a different standard. learning about Huey P. and Bobby makes me carry myself to a different standard. It's made me be a different type of friend. It's put a different expectation in me, you know. So I think I don't know how do you get people, because it still would be hard in 2021 to convince a parent that I know they have great scores and this, that, and other, but what about history? You know, but it's something that I think we have to awaken towards understanding its importance, or just take Black history out of school and make Black history something that we're fully responsible for. You know, the Black community, we educate ourselves on Black history, because I don't see Chinese people relying on the school to teach Chinese history, or, you know, Jewish people, they didn't talk about Jewish history none in school, and they were fine. So depending on the school to talk about it, it just seems like it's just not an efficient, you know, strategy, you know.
Yeah, I think there are some alternative schools that, you know, at the time we probably didn't know about, but there are people that like were homeschooled at a certain age, so they did know, or there were like independent schools where they did get a balance, because we're saying history, but it also extends to like mathematics and other subjects. Because if you know that the Black people discovered astronomy and mathematics and all of that, it's not just history. Then it goes into history, and when you start talking about math, you have to integrate what was going on. Because if you did the pyramid, you had to know the triangle.
Yeah.
You know, you had to know A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Not just in the history class, even in the math class. Because even in math, they would talk about history. They would name people, but they would always start with the Greeks. And in science, they would always start with the Greeks. They would talk about Isaac Newton and people like that. They didn't talk about what was going on in ancient Kemet to instill in us that, no, these were Black people that were doing that. How were they building the pyramids? They didn't just do it in the daytime. They had to have some kind of electricity. Where did that come from? You know, like, so it's not just sending your kid to a school just to learn history. It extends to other subjects, is what I'm trying to say. It extends to science. It extends to math. It extends to government. The first governments, you know, we had the first government. So all of that stuff extends to the other subjects in school, and not just history. But we kind of limited to say, okay, in history class. But if we really knew our full extent and our full involvement in history, then we would know, hey, if you went to school for math, or if you went to school for architecture or engineering or law or whatever, all of this stuff was already being practiced. Long before the Greeks came. No, like we were practicing this stuff, and they came to the places like Timbuktu and going to the libraries and looking at what we had. We just didn't get credit for it. But back to like the supplemental history, can y'all remember like the first book that maybe just opened y'all eyes to, like, when you opened it up, it's like a light came on and you was like, whoa?
I say probably the Browder File, Anthony Browder File, and Undergrad. That's probably the first book about, you know, our Blackness that I, you know, voluntarily just read. That, you know, it wasn't my dad forcing me. It wasn't a class project. And then he started presenting some new ideas that I was like, man, and I had never thought about things that way. You know, he's the first person to kind of really present.
Written by Anthony Browder.
Yeah, right? written by Anthony Browder. And he was the first person to present, you know, different ideas that, you know, might have been deep down inside. I might have already had the thought but didn't know how to word it. But then he started presenting, you know, hey, we're the original people. We're the, you know, there was a time before slavery when we actually were excelling, and he started bringing a lot of things together that
he did it in a real relatable way. It wasn't like over your head in a scholarly type fashion. It was easy to easily accessible, like when you're reading it. Like you can give it to a kid and they can read it, and it's not so academic. Because I remember reading that book and having that same feeling, like, oh wow, he was able to make the complex parts of history in a more relatable way. Because for me, man, I could remember in high school, I got this book called From Niggas to Gods by a dude named Akil. It was a part 1 and it was a part 2. And man, it was like one of the rawest books, because you're reading it like this dude is talking to you. Like you open, he's like, and he's using the language. He's like, nigga, put that drink down right now. You need to, and it was like just a real matter of fact And I remember
Read that.
going to Sharpstown. For the people that's watching this that's not from Houston, it's a mall, Sharpstown. They had a store called African Imports. And I just remember going in there and seeing it and seeing the cover, like, wow, and picking it up. And then I couldn't put it down, and then reading that and then getting part two. And that was kind of like that intro for me outside of listening to hip hop.
Yeah.
Because the thing with hip hop, you know, we'll get to it. Some of their history is kind of, you got to double check. But Sav, what you got?
Yeah, man. So for me, like my prerequisite was like reading Richard Wright when I was in high school. So Native Son and Black Boy, I had read both of those. But I think when I read the Miseducation of the Negro, I read Miseducation of the Negro when I was probably my first year in college.
Yeah, Carter G.
And I got into all of it, Anthony Browder as well. But yeah, that Carter G, like that kind of really just like was the key.
Yeah.
Then I read Stolen Legacy, like right after that, and I read From Niggas to Gods as well. But that was kind of like that portal was Miseducation for me.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nah, I can see that. That was one my dad had that. I never read it. Still haven't read it. But yeah, no, that was that stuff important, man. That stuff really, because it really changes things. Like, you know, I used to always wonder. I still wonder to this day. I really hate when I hear. Cause I really love studying like philosophy and great thinkers. And then I feel like, man, why is there nobody black? Even though my personal belief, Socrates black in my book, you know, and Plato. Now that don't even sound like no not black dude named Plato, you know, man. It's like, but not having any quote or any theory or having any philosophy that is reference to anyone black, you know, that I don't like that. People will sit up here all day and talk about how great Nietzsche is, and Nietzsche's, that's a bad man, but I know it doesn't start or stop there. We've been just left out of the credits as far as contributions, and that stuff that representation matters.
Yeah, it was weird because me and Sav went to the same high school, and our high school is named after Booker T. Washington. And we were just saying how, I went to that high school, and I can't remember any teacher. I can't remember. Sav, you could correct me if I'm wrong, man. Maybe, you had it. I don't remember hearing about Booker T. Washington historically while I was at that school. And I didn't take it upon myself to even learn who Booker T. Washington was. I just took it for granted that I went to a school named after Booker T. Washington. That was it. Kids go to school now like at Addicts Middle School, Crispus Attucks. I don't even know if they instill it in the kids. Like, we know now the Robert E. Lee, schools like Lee, because of the ties to the Confederacy. So it makes people learn that side of history. Yeah. But I don't know, like when kids go to these high schools, the few that are named after black people, do they get the history of that person that school is named after? You go to Yates High School and it's named after Reverend Yates. Do you get that history, or is that just something you learn from outside of the school? Because going to PV, we had to learn some history of PV. You went to FAMU. Did they instill some history of FAMU?
Not chronological, who it was started by, how. The information was readily available if you went and seek it, but no, it wasn't something where it was just, part of our, I guess freshman, incoming experience was to learn that part of it. Because
we say HBCU, right? And we say historically black colleges and universities. It starts with, the first word is historically.
Yeah.
So that should be your foundation, right? Historically. So when people say, I went to a HBCU, okay, it starts with history. What's the history of that? It's like, okay, we said with pride that we went to these schools without them instilling in us the history of those schools, how it was started. Certain schools, they do that. I know it's some of the predominantly white institutions, they indoctrinate them. You better say it with pride. You better know this is like how this school was started and who did it and why it was started. But with us, we can't wait on anybody. We always say this on the show. We can't wait on anybody. And sometimes we can't even wait on ourselves. Because the first time I heard W.E.B. Du Bois was at Prairie View, at the assembly, when Frank Jackson was talking to us and he named The Souls of Black Folks as a book. And I just remembered, it's just stuck in my head. He said W.E.B. Du Bois. I was like, okay. And then later I tried to read that book, and that was like the most academic book. I was like, yo, I got to put this down.
Yeah, that was a hard read.
It was a hard read. It wasn't like the Browder Files, where it was like, man, I can relate to this. But I don't know, you know, out of the kids that was in there, some they may have went over their head, or they didn't care, or they didn't care to know. But it was some times where that was one person that was just doing that at that freshman assembly, giving us the history of Prairie View, giving us the name, why this building is named after this person, or this is what it was like during segregation. And it instilled a pride in us, even for the sports. And people was like, okay, Prairie View had the longest losing streak. This is why. When they started integrating, you know, the players were going out to these other schools. You gotta think about it. Like in history's time, right now, the most prominent football program is Alabama.
Yeah.
He say, damn, when you look at the history of Alabama, he say, damn, what makes a kid, a black kid from the inner city, pass up going to all of these other schools and say, I'm gonna go to school in Alabama? They built that program off of the black talent to get it where it's at. And I'm just saying that as just part of the history. Even when we start talking about the sports and going to HBCUs, knowing that history of, they used to call Prairie View the Black Notre Dame at a certain time. Because if you only had certain schools to go to, this is where you went. In the high schools, it's only certain schools that you have to go to. So the history, you know, from elementary to middle school, and we talked about Booker T. Washington and the names of the high schools, and then the colleges, and then that history. When we say historically black,
I think a lot of the history that was focused on at FAMU was more the modern history, like you know, Dr. Mobley, who started the SBI School of Business. The Dr. Humphreys, the president of the university. It was more so like most of the information was really more kind of garnered towards modern or recent history. People, alumni who had, maybe come from the school within the past 25 years or so. That probably was like the emphasis of history. And then, also just people who, we all take pride in somebody who went to our school that has, done things in life. So,
because it got the A&M on the back, Florida A&M, Prairie View A&M. So, you got those agriculture and mechanical is attached to some of these historically black schools. And I know this is not the episode where we talk about the history of the colleges, but just a good footnote. I got another question, because we talked about hip hop a little bit. From listening to hip hop, was it an introduction through history from anything that y'all ever heard musically, not just hip hop, but maybe just musically, where it made y'all question and dig a little deeper?
No, I didn't have a relationship with hip hop. You had hip hop really didn't bring nothing good out of me.
Oh man,
to be real, I'm someone who rapped for 10 years, but I didn't really. I say, I got to a certain type of artist that might have challenged just from a literary or a writing standpoint. Yeah. But I didn't have any rap that made me, feel empowered in the right ways.
Or just to make you go research something. Like you heard something and it made you like, okay, I want to research this for historical purposes or find something out.
Well, for me, it wasn't necessarily historical. It just put me on authors. I discovered Octavia Butler, who's like my favorite author now through MC. You know what I mean? I discovered Toni Morrison, through, MC, you know what I mean? So it was putting me on books and authors. And then sometimes, obviously, you're going to go down a rabbit hole. You're going to get some history along the way or whatever. But it wasn't specifically geared towards history as far as hip hop. But I think it was a gateway. Yeah.
Nah.
Because I remember... Now, the history that is maybe a little different because we're in a southern region, but when you start listening to Wu-Tang, and even prior to listening to Wu-Tang, and you heard Ice Cube, and he was referencing the Nation of Islam or Public Enemy, and they were playing the speeches of Farrakhan in the music, to give you that history of like Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, the NOI, and then Rakim came, and it was weird because you had this dude calling himself God, right? And down south, we go to church. It was like blasphemous or sacrilegious or whatever, and then to know that history is the nation of gods and earth, coming from hip hop and primarily the East Coast at that time, to hear Rakim usher in that history of the nation of gods and earth, and then Wu-Tang and groups ushering in that history, starting with with some of what Public Enemy was saying, and ushering in the history of the NOI, or talking about Malcolm X, because in Self-Destruction, the song, it starts with that speech. It's a Malcolm X speech that starts off self-destruction. So it was always like, it's there to kind of integrate it in pop culture a little bit around that time.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I mean, even though we only like 4 years apart, man, I just had a totally different experience. In my neighborhood, it was, Screwed Up Click just wasn't really inspiring you to go to pick up a book and learn.
But it was on TV, like the videos, they were showing it on it was popular, like guys that didn't even know about the Nation of Gods and Earth, they were playing Eric B. and Rakim, and they were listening to Wu-Tang, and people were listening to Public Enemy and Ice Cube, because Ice Cube was starting with NWA, and then he left to make music with Public Enemy.
Yeah, I don't have a single friend that had a Public Enemy CD or had an Ice Cube CD or had. It was like, it was like Snoop Dogg, Bone.
But yeah, I can see, because you got to think 4 years is in eternity. If we're talking about 89, that's a wider gap than 4 years when you get older. Yeah. Like, okay, when I'm 100, you're gonna be 96, right? Yeah. It's not, you know what I'm saying? But if you're 10 and I'm 14,
it was not. I wish I would have had that experience.
That's a big gap.
And like, but I just, I mean, I'm not saying hip hop as a whole, because certain things were empowering and inspiring, and seeing guys achieve certain things inspires you. But the narrative of the music never inspired me as a child to like learn about my history or put me up on any books. So all that came as I got older and became more like selective. But as a child, it was a lot of B's and H's and it wasn't
the
really
vulgar side. Because Sal brought up the Carter G. Woodson book, The Miseducation of the Negro, and one of the most popular CDs that came out was Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which references the miseducation of the Negro. It's a play off of that, the name of that book, which I don't know if it's ever just been referenced like that through her. I'm not really sure around that time, but it's still a subliminal message in the history, like Sal was saying, in listening and getting authors. So she calling her album The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Is it The Miseducation? Yeah, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Mm-hmm. It's a direct play off The Miseducation of the Negro. Yeah. So now you got that, that the similarity to where, okay, a young lady listens to that. I wonder, would that inspire, or would they make that connection to say, okay, this was modeled after the title of the Carter G. Woodson book?
Yeah, I'd like to pose a question to our ladies, listeners. If that CD, because that's just like
it's a classic,
iconic CD. If that CD ever made them want to go and look into that book, The Miseducation of the Negro, because the thing is, like, even though her CD obviously takes from that name, from that book title, it doesn't really talk a lot about the messaging. It's kind of more subliminal the way that it addresses the message. It's not like direct. And so I wonder if they ever made that kind of correlation or that parallel from listening to that CD or whatever, because she kind of makes it like a love CD, or whatever, but she does have the classroom skits on there or whatever, but it's kind of more so.
Yeah, it's her personal growth of her personal miseducation, but it's still the tie-in, to the book.
And the history makes you really examine things, modern day things, a little more critically too, because when you come across the information, you look at things a little bit differently. Like, I had made a post, about how I felt either way about BLM, but like, when you know about the Black Panthers, you look at things modern day differently. When you know about The story of I mean, even when you know about the true Martin Luther King, you look at things differently, and I think that part about the power of the information is something I think is really just overlooked, man. And I think too, for me, for a long time, I felt like I didn't know where to start, and I think it might be a common theme with people not knowing where to start. I've learned a lot of stuff literally just from YouTube, like. And I used to clown YouTube scholars and all that, and you could learn a lot of stuff from, like, if you literally just start with just typing Malcolm X in YouTube, like, or whoever you've heard of. It could be Martin, you could Baldwin, doesn't even matter. That rabbit hole and that algorithm will just take you on a journey of Black history. You could start by just typing in Black history, and I think that was surprising too. It wasn't the journey, and a lot of stuff I learned, it hadn't been the way in my mind I had envisioned it to be. I thought it would be, a stack of books and some of it has been, but a lot of it has also been the power of audio books. That's really been impactful too. I didn't really start engaging in audio books that tough till really the past year. You can learn a lot of stuff from an audio book. Like in a lot of ways, it's more convenient than a regular book. To really be able to learn passively and stuff.
Yeah, one of the valuable libraries to me, and in Houston, from the time before YouTube, was the Shrine of the Black Madonna, and going in there and seeing books that related to you.
Yeah,
and if I heard something in if you're listening to music or being influenced by hip hop, and then you see it and you're like, oh, okay, I heard that in that song. Like Sav said, I saw that. Now I see that book because I heard someone reference it. Yeah. You go in there and you get it. And now, yeah, we are in a time where the physical book is damn near like a CD, or it's like an album. To where it's gonna be like they say never judge a book by the cover. Yeah. But these are gonna be like album covers, and people collect them.
I say the physical book is more like vinyl, because some of these
album vinyl.
Some of these books you really could build a nice asset. Especially.
Yeah, it'll be damn near like vinyl, because I don't know. As bookstores start to become like dinosaurs to a certain extent, they start to become extinct.
Yeah, I guarantee this book is worth at least $100. I have to check it out. Outside of podcasting, I'm Amazon seller, but I guarantee like some of that a book like that, a lot of those books will have like a lot of value to it too, just as an added benefit.
Yeah, it's like vinyl. You get the first edition, the first edition of it, and there are certain books that cost a lot, but they're worth a lot, and then sometimes people don't really know the value of the books that they have. And we talked about it on the previous podcast, the idea of building your library and then having someone else in your family that you could they could inherit the library that you have, and they could continue to pass it on just like we do with vinyl or anything, or like family Bibles. People pass it on from generation to generation. I'm wondering now, and I would, this is sparking the conversation that I would have to have with my son too. How history how it's presented in 2021 during this time, because we talked about the little stuff that we gained and what we remembered, and not really remembering history from the perspective of us as the victors. Also, it seems like the history and what we would do in class is they talk about slavery and you kind of put your head down. It's a little bit of an embarrassment, because it just made you seem as if you were just the victim all the time and not necessarily the victor. They're not going to teach you about Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser. They're not going to teach you about David Walker's appeal or anything like that. So it's almost like it's taught from the perspective of and maybe it breeds the inferiority complexes for kids sometimes. Because imagine if you're a kid and you knew the people that looked like you were the first in math and science. Like if you had
the Imhoteps, man.
Yeah, man, the pyramids, and it's not an alien, or it's not, they say the Middle East, they even take that out of Africa. and that's a part of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So just imagine that, man, getting that at an early age and looking at yourself as the victor and not just being like, oh, I'm just the victim. Like, yo, I won. Like, people have pride when they talk about America. These people, when they say they are patriots, because they're looking at it like, oh, America won. They start going back to the wars against the British and all of that. They had this sense of pride sometimes in some of these wars that were fought. But on the flip side, we got to dig deep to have that pride.
And I think we got to write and document as well. One of the things I'm working towards being more intentional about, because we got to create the history pieces, and like we're doing with the show. I want to take the next step and just start doing with the pen and pad, and really start telling that so that we have the stories, so that, the next generation, hey, maybe I could be a name next to the great thinkers but I have to document that. I have to, we can't leave our Facebook pages to the next generation, so I think that's a part of it as well. And that pride, for me, one of the things I was blessed with was just being part of a legacy. I was able to see somebody with my name do a lot of things that was great. And that does a lot for you psychologically, but that can be recreated through just knowledge of history. You don't have to have Roman numerals after your name to be able to reference somebody that looked like you doing things. And I say this about my life all the time. Everything that I've ever done in my life, I saw another black person do it first as a reference. And for me, seeing and knowing that a black person had done it before, particularly a black male had done it before, it brought a sense of confirmation that it was possible. I haven't really lived a trailblazing life in that way, but I think for a lot of young black, men and women, knowing that and instilling that in a person, that makes it believable. That makes it, hey, if you look at the time of the 60s and when there was like the Panthers and all of that, well, knowing that, hey, there's some people who actually have started a movement, that makes you believe that you can actually start a movement. So, hey, you may not be the Panthers, you may be, the what they call them, Judas, the Crowns, but it brings a sense of confirmation that it's possible. And I think if we had that, it would capture a lot of sometimes, the brothers that slip through the cracks who maybe just don't have that reference point. And, obviously in the perfect world, the reference point would be start with your father, but it doesn't have to be that, if we get the information out there and make it more presentable, because information is everything,
Yeah, you brought up the fact about like the family and the name, and one thing that the Nation of Islam, one of the many things that they gave me some awareness of is your last name. And changing your name, of being named, learning the history of where your name came from. 'Cause I think now that it comes back, like in the book that opened my eyes a little bit, that got me on okay, I need to dig a little deeper. The Niggas to Guys. He was like, okay, Johnson, that's like John's son. Like you were John's son at the time. So I don't know how accurate that was, but being named after people that owned you, that owned your family, and then saying, no, I'll change that, or I'll put an X because it's unknown. I don't know my true last name.
Yeah.
And some of us, we don't know our true history. It's just that X, that unknown. We say Malcolm X at the time. His last name was unknown. Even though he was born Malcolm Little, it's still that, hey, on the quest for knowledge of self or knowing who you are.
Hey, I feel that definitely. We're gonna be some Mayberries though, man. We gonna wave this flag. We done rebrand. I ain't never seen a white Mayberry, so obviously, we didn't get it from, the motherland. But I definitely see the value in that approach too. But I ain't gonna lie, I like my name. I don't think nothing about white folks when I think about it.
Yeah, no. I was just giving context, not you personally, but just context to. And when we talk about history and unknown, you can start right there with your last name. Now, if you could trace it and then. Hey,
yeah, but it's multiple approaches. I ain't saying it's right or wrong. That's why I tell people this all the time. I'm not in the convention business. I'm in the observation business. You know, so I'm just an ass for me and my house. But I feel like I do see the value in that too, because there's a sense of strength that comes from detachment. And so I definitely can see the value in that approach. And I think there's value in knowing the different options, knowing that hey, there's more than one way that you can approach what it is that you want to do, because we're so unexposed to other forms of blackness, and a lot of times so unobjective in our ability to view other forms of blackness. I could look, I don't practice, I'm not a member of the nation. I don't practice that. I can see the value in that. I can see the healing properties that the nation can bring to a black man. And I can say that, coming from, hey, being a Christian, I can say that there's some revolutionary things that faith has. I can look at Hebrew Israelites and say, yeah, there's a lot of value in that. But that's from having the information and being objective. I don't even like calling myself a Christian. I really feel like, a student of Yeshua. But when we're able to look and get information and not have everything be so, there's only one faith, there's only one this, there's only one that, I think we could be better people,
Yeah, because a lot of the, even if we talk about Booker T or something, they were kind of naming themselves because they didn't have a lot of birth records.
Yeah.
To even know when they were born, to even have their own personal history.
Yeah.
Like if you're separated from your mother or you're separated from your father, and you just like you're naming yourself to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You take on a different name, or sometimes people have to find power in the name that was given to them.
I'd have to go the Native American route if I was naming myself. I would have gave myself. It wouldn't have been. I'd have been like that boy Cole Jones or something. Like I would have went.
We're talking about a different time period, and a different mind state from what you know now. Like you're saying it from from what you know now.
Nah, but I feel you coming from.
But it's just to really talk to the people and understanding like how we kind of just took the training wheels off and went right into doing a podcast and calling it Gentleman's History Hour. And I think it's important for us to have these kind of shows where maybe we, the light bulb will go off in other people's head on like, man, when did I start learning, history or how it was taught to me, or I went to a HBCU. Do I really know the history of the school I went to when I say it with so much pride?
Yeah.
Because, if you're in basketball or if you play sports, they're going to tell you the guys that are great at it, they know the history of the players that came before them. You talk to a guy like LeBron, he's going to tell you the history of the guys that came before him. Michael Jordan, they're going to tell you the history of the guys that came before them. If you're majoring in anything, they have history aside from the history that you learn. Like, okay, you got to take this little class to get a credit. You have to take architectural history or whatever other subject that you major in. You're gonna learn some type of history for that.
Nah, I feel that. The only thing, man, my last thing would just be this. One of the things that be concern me sometimes is when people view the show as something like, I've invited some people before. I can't come sit around. I don't even know what or they have like an intimidation where it's as if, this is something where, we're not in here doing black belt karate. There's something that with just a little bit of effort, anyone can begin the process. You don't have to learn it with the goal of being a podcaster or not. It's just something that requires intention, just like anything else, and it's not something that requires, it's not a law degree. You don't have to shut your life down, but if it's something you could put in an hour, 5-6 days a week, ideally, or if it's an hour every other day, you will. A matter of fact, I wouldn't even start with the time quota. I would just start. And I think once you start, you'll start going down a path that you'll start seeing the value in it.
Yeah, you gotta be humble with it, cause some people they'll turn people off cause they start knowing stuff, and it's like that know-it-all mentality of like wanting to just flaunt what they learned, you know, cause it's a bit of an anger that comes with it because you're angry that you didn't know something or you were not taught something. So it is a certain anger. It's like, man, why didn't I know? Why didn't I know this? Why did no one taught me this?
Yeah.
Why didn't they tell me about this? So you got that once you overcome that anger and you really use it as a journey to learn that knowledge of self first, to where you don't just come right out the gate like and this and you're wrong about this, and then people don't, it's how you present it to people. Yeah. Sometimes you get the knowledge, man, it's like a gun, man, it's dangerous. Like you wanna fire them shots off, man, everywhere you go, but it's a way that you gotta make it appealing to people to where they want to know and they're not intimidated by it.
No, most definitely. So
it's hey, this is Gentleman's History Hour, man. I think we had a real great discussion, man. Just our personal journey into history and the importance of not just seeing history from the terms of just history in the history books, but history all around us.
Yeah, I agree.
So Equality.
Rob J10X.
Hey, man, y'all continue to subscribe. We need to get to what we want, at least 1,000 by what?
Man, let's do it a month from
by
today.
April 1st. I mean,
April.
by May. Hold on, March, April. By May, April 1st.
In 30 days from now, we want it.
Yeah, 30 days from now, man. We trying to get that. We're trying to get that 1,000, man. I think it's attainable. So we're just humbly asking the people, man, to tell a friend to hit the subscribe button. We really value and appreciate the people that leave us comments and the people that have been supporting us, man. This is Gentleman's History Hour, pod and production, platformation. Peace. If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.